What's up guys, how you doing? Welcome to another video and welcome to another Tutorial Tuesday. So today I thought I would do a video all about looking at some tips for beginners flying a drone. I thought it would be a good idea to share some of my tips. I have not been flying drones for long. I'm relatively new to using drones, by no means an expert, but I've learnt enough over the last few months that actually I'm probably in the perfect position to advise a beginner, because I was a beginner not too long ago and now I've kind of moved past that phase. So today I'm going to give you my top 6 tips for beginner drone flyers. I think these 6 tips will really help you out. If you follow these, it will get you off to a great starting point for flying your drone. Now, the drone I have myself is the DJI Mavic Air, but pretty much everything we're going to talk about relates to pretty much every drone. This type of drone is probably a fairly common one for a beginner to use. Maybe something like this. Obviously, the Mavic Mini is going to be very popular nowadays. The DJI Spark, which I previously owned just prior to getting this Mavic Air. But those are the type of drones generally that people tend to start off with. But either way, I think my tips will apply to pretty much every drone. It doesn't matter which one you're using. Right, so no messing around. Let's get straight into tip number 1, and that is all to do with making sure you have set up your drone correctly before you even turn it on. And that's all to do with the battery, right? You would be amazed how quick these batteries on these drones run out. It is fast. Most of these drones tend to have something in the region of a 20, maybe if you're lucky 30-minute flight time. Now that isn't that long. Once you get it up, you move it around a little bit, chances are your battery's at 50%, and whatever you do, you want to make sure you have got enough battery power to get home. And for me, that means never flying on a battery that is anything other than full. Always, I charge the batteries before I go out to fly the drone. I have 2. I really recommend getting a spare battery, otherwise your flight time is really limited. And I will make sure that both my batteries are fully charged before I go out to fly that drone. You don't want to be in a situation where you're taking off with 60% battery, because that in turn, chances are means by the time you get near the end of your flight, you're pushing down in that like 20, 15, even 10% battery. And bad things happen when you get to that level of battery. Your drone will try to land automatically, stuff like that, which you do not want to happen. So tip number 1, always have fully charged batteries. Okay, tip number 2 is another thing to do with how you set up your drone, and that's to make sure you give yourself the best possible opportunity to get the best connection with your drone. Now, the biggest thing that someone taught me when I was starting out was all to do with the controller. Most people naturally will set up their controller, and you will do it so that the aerials or the antennas go straight up like that. Now, the problem is, if you're doing that, and like most people, you're holding your controller out here in front of you, the main field from those antennas is then pointing straight down towards the ground. So really simple tip, but when someone told me, I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, is to tilt these to about a 45-degree angle, so that when you're then holding your controller, your main field of signal from your antennas is pointing straight out towards where your drone is up there in the sky. And you want to try to maintain that. If your drone is over there, stand so the main field of your antennas is pointing over there. If your drone's up there ahead of you, if it's directly above you, and so on and so on. You want to try to keep these at a 45-degree angle, and wherever possible, you want to try to give the front of your antennas a clear field towards your drone. Another quick little bonus tip for those of you guys who fly a Mavic Air: make sure the antennas on the bottom of your arms are folded out. It sounds like such a simple thing, but the first time I flew this drone, I didn't realise that. I hadn't noticed. Make sure these antennas are folded out, because again, that gives you the best possible signal between your remote control and your drone. Okay, tip number 3, and now we are moving on to actually flying your drone, potentially flying your drone for the first time. Now that's exciting, right? It can also be very nerve-wracking, I can tell you now. First time you fly your drone and you see on the screen of your controller that your drone has gone 100 meters up in the air and you can barely see it. You get nervous. It is change of shorts time if you are not fully prepared. And with that in mind, I really recommend getting totally used to flying your drone before you go too far away, too high, or anything extreme. That means find yourself a nice clear open space, nowhere near buildings, nowhere near people, and fly it around really low to the ground. Fly it back and forth, get used to what the different controls do, what going straight up looks like, what coming straight down looks like, what turning on the spot looks like, what going left, right, front, back, those basic controls. Low to the ground, nice and near to you, clear open space. Don't get carried away and feel like your first shot needs to be some epic, like above a city type of drone shot. That takes a lot more experience and is risky, and you do not want to do something like that until you are much more confident with flying your drone. Now, these DJI drones also have an awesome beginner mode. You can set that really easily on your controller, and that means that your drone won't fly too far away, it won't fly high, and if you feel comfortable, perfect opportunity, do that, turn it on and use that practice mode when you're flying it around right near to where you are. Okay, tip number 4. Now this one is to do with flying your drone and making sure you cover your bases and you give yourself the best possible opportunity for that drone to come back to you if something goes wrong. Now fingers crossed it won't, but if something does go wrong, these drones have loads of great safety systems, and a lot of them revolve around the return to home function. And what that means is that if your drone loses signal or the battery gets a little bit too low and you haven't realized, it will automatically go into a return to home mode. Now what that means is that your drone will have a pre-registered home spot. It's identified this is home, and that's where it will fly to if something goes wrong. If you lose all signal on your drone and your drone needs to go somewhere, it will decide, where do I need to go? I need to go home, and it will fly to that point. And that's why it is really, really important every single time you fly your drone, you make sure on your controller that you have set the home point to where you are, to where you're taking off and where you want that drone to come back to. It's really easy to do it in the controller in the DJI app. You just go in there, you set it up, and it will tell you, it will confirm with you that it has registered your current position as the home point. You can also set it on your controller as well. There's a button on there that you can do it if you want to. And the other thing that you can do is you can set the altitude that you want your drone to go to when it returns to home. Now that's really, really useful. If you're in a clear open field, it doesn't really matter too much. If that drone returns home at 50 meters height, chances are it's going to be fine. But as you do get a little bit more advanced, and maybe you are flying in places where there might be something higher than that, you can set that altitude higher. So you could, for example, say, I want the return to home height to be 75 meters or 100 meters height. And then what happens is the drone, when it goes into that return to home mode, it goes to that height and then it returns to home. A useful function to go along with the return to home function. Now the next tip is all to do with actually flying your drone and trying to get some nice, smooth, professional looking footage that you are happy with. Now the best thing for doing that when you are a beginner is just to concentrate on single movements with your drone. And by that I mean just move in one direction. Don't worry about trying to get too fancy with like panning around stuff or in and out of things. Just concentrate on one single movement. If you keep one single movement from your drone, you can get your footage to look really cool. It looks smooth, it looks cinematic. Even something simple like a scene where you're coming into land. Nice smooth motion towards that. It looks pretty cool. The problem comes in as soon as you start to add extra movements to your drone. If someone is watching footage and it's a smooth flight of that drone, it looks great. As soon as you start to get a turn or a jerky movement, straight away it turns something that actually looked quite professional to something that looks quite amateur. You can see with this footage here, we looked really smooth as we were coming into land, and as soon as that movement starts in the footage, it looks amateur. It looks like someone is flying a drone. And that's the tip. Single movements are better until you get more experience and more used to controlling your drone. And tip number 6, last but certainly not least, once you've moved past that and you do want to start getting some more cinematic clips, these DJI drones have really useful things set up in them called the quick shot modes. Now what these enable you to do is to set up for your drone to fly in a pre-planned set motion. Now some of the clips you guys will see of like people making awesome films with their drones will be things like the drone circling around an object. And yes, more more experienced flyers, they do that free-handed. They control that in that perfect smooth panning motion. But if, like myself, you haven't quite got to that level of skill controlling your drone, these quick shots are fantastic. For example, you can use the circle quick shot mode, and what that will do is it will lock onto something. Wherever you draw the square on your screen, it will lock onto something and it will circle around it. You can see this clip right here. I shot this with the circle program inside the quick shot mode. It gives me a nice cinematic look at the Prairie. Fantastic, and much better than I could have done if I was trying to control that myself. So tip number 6, don't overlook the quick shot modes. They can be really, really useful when you're starting out, and even when you get a few months down the line. I use those all the time. And there we go, guys, that's it. That is my top 6 tips for beginner drone flyers. If you guys have got any other great tips, make sure you hit them in the comments below. Let me know what type of drones you're flying. I'm really interested to hear. Do I have other people who fly Mavic Airs watching, Mavic Minis, DJI Sparks, maybe something more professional like the Phantoms and things like that? It'd be really interesting to see what type of drone flyers we have got following along with the videos. If you guys did enjoy this one, make sure you hit the like button. It helps me out loads, helps out my channel, and I really, really appreciate it. Think about subscribing if you haven't already. Loads of other videos coming on my channel. And guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video.